Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Friday night Roswell live book reading of Loose Ends. We are on chapters 19 and 20. We might get to 21, I'm not sure, but at least 19 and 20. So I'm Christy, and I'm going to be joined by Michelle in a second. She is popping on right now. So hello to everyone joining us. Hello.
Hi, Roswell fam.
Hey.
Let me do my filter that makes me prettier.
Guess what I got today?
What did you get? Oh, my Lanta. Isn't it lovely?
It's lovely. I need a frame now, which I can get for 40% off at the thrift store where I work. So that's where I'll be
That's right.
frames. Because I've got a lot of pictures to be put in frames. So
I got the mug, and then I just now got a notification that my canvas tote bag is in with our faces on it.
fun.
But I haven't got my picture yet.
Fun. Yeah.
Patiently waiting.
The picture. So
yeah, that's what I'm waiting on. That'll be fun.
all right.
I got some new buttons. I got a B and a T.
Awesome.
To represent.
All right. I like the B and T buttons. I saw your picture. It was cute.
Thanks. I know everybody's running a little behind, so it looks like, hi, Alex. Looks like Alex is here with us.
Yes, he is. Hello, Alex. So I'm typing a pinned comment. We always do this. We like to just highlight a charity and support a charity. It's totally optional if you want to donate, but we like to just read in support of some of our favorite charities. And this one is helping the homeless, which is always just kind of an afterthought whenever pandemics happen, and just in life in general, even before the pandemic, not a lot of people just think about the homeless. So this organization, the National Coalition for the Homeless, it helps the homeless with immediate needs that they may have, and they fight for civil rights of the homeless. So I'm just gonna
Nice.
put the website in there.
Well, there's a new filter. I have to touch it and see what it does. Maybe not, huh?
I can't see most of it because I'm typing.
Oh.
But maybe the people in the chat room will be like, yeah, that's cool.
That was not cool. Oh, there's my typical sunglasses one.
Yes, that's the one that you put on whenever sunglasses are mentioned in the books.
That's my thing. Everybody's got to have their thing, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that one's kind of cool. This is all your fault. I never did filters.
I will. You know, that's
Hi, Rachel.
one of the best things on it. Filters.
Rachel, let me tell you about these sleeves on this waitress uniform. They are the worst. I've almost given up like 4 times trying to sew sleeves onto this thing.
No.
I've been messaging Rachel all of my journey trying to make this crash down waitress uniform.
Yeah.
It's beyond hell. And I haven't even got to the collar yet, which I think is going to even be more hell. And I bought this faux leather fabric because I thought for some reason that would make a nicer sleeve. And yeah. I have to hand sew it because it looks terrible when you use the machine to try to sew it. I better have some place to wear this thing other than on my couch talking to y'all.
Right. That's for sure. Okay. Well, do you want to read chapter 19 or?
Sure. I can read 19 if you want to read 20, and then when we get to 21, if you want me to jump back in and read, and then if we have enough time before Jess jumps in.
Now, should we do what we did last time and be cautious and say the live after every chapter? Should we risk it?
So I want to say you look very clear right now, and last time you were super blurry for me. How do I look?
You look pretty
Other than
clear.
gorgeous. So maybe this is the time where it's going to work.
Well,
Shouldn't have
we
said
could
that out
probably
loud,
fit
huh?
19 and 20 into one live and then save that, and then we'll see how far we get.
Okay, sounds good. So then you want me to go ahead and start because I know people can watch this
Yes.
later what they missed, or do you want to give some people some more time? I don't know.
There's about 5 people in here, and I think we should start since most people
Okay.
watch them on playback. So,
All right, chapter 19, Loose Ends by Greg Cox. Max let the light from his hand dim as he followed Liz towards the door of Morton's messy motel room. They wouldn't need any artificial illumination once they were back outside. Max just hoped that Michael and Isabel were still keeping Morton and his scientific consultant occupied. Liz is right, he thought apprehensively. The sooner we ditch this place, the better. Liz was reaching for the doorknob when they suddenly heard footsteps and angry shouting right outside the door. Morton's gruff, raspy voice sent Max's heart racing. Hurry up, will you? The gunman bellowed impatiently as someone rattled the doorknob from the other side. Max and Liz looked at each other in alarm, frozen in place with nowhere to run. The teenage alien stared in confusion at the phone on the end table. Why didn't Michael and Isabel warn us Morton was coming back? Suddenly he noticed that the phone cord was no longer attached to the back of the cheap plastic phone. No, he whispered out loud, realizing that Morton must have unplugged the phone before leaving the disorderly motel room. But why? Oh, crap, another voice exclaimed outside with audible shock and dismay. The door's unlocked. The science guy, Max guessed. Instinctively, he extinguished his silver glow, throwing the room into murky darkness. What? Morton snarled. The door slammed open, almost hitting Liz, who had jumped backward to avoid being whacked by the swinging door. The intense New Mexican sunshine flooded the room, exposing Max and Liz to the 2 men who now crowded through the narrow doorway, blocking their escape route. The scientist barely preceded Morton, who shoved his learned accomplice out of the way in order to charge at Liz like a wild boar, his florid face a mask of malevolence. What the hell is going on? He shouted, spittle flying from his lips, then did a double take when he got a better look at Liz's face. Wait a second, he muttered, confusion briefly supplanting rage upon his porcine features. I know you. He grabbed onto Liz's arm and pulled her closer, struggling visibly to place where he'd seen her before. Where? Max raised a hand, aiming his open palm at Morton's broad frame. A faint silver aura outlined his fingers as he summoned the concentration to blast Morton to kingdom come. At the last minute, though, he remembered the rattlesnake he had so thoroughly obliterated the night before and Michael's disturbing warnings regarding Max's current lack of control and the awful consequences of taking a human life. The rattler's smoking remains sprang from his memory, superimposed on Morton's repugnant face, and Max hesitated before unleashing his psychic energy. He paused just long enough, in fact, for the overlooked lab worker to tackle Max from the side, knocking him to the floor amidst the clatter of upset beer cans and plastic Coke bottles. Max landed hard on the bone-jarring impact, causing him to grunt out loud. He almost lost his grip on the attaché case, but he held on to the handle with all of his strength, unwilling to let go of the precious alien artifacts. The surprisingly aggressive techie kid kicked viciously at Max's head and barely managed to roll out of the way in time to avoid the blow. Sorry, I lost my place. Reaching out desperately from his position on the floor, he succeeded in catching hold of the attacker's sneakered foot with his right hand, forcing the techie to hop precariously on one leg, while Max, still lying on his side, used the other arm to swing the briefcase like a club, smashing the case into his opponent's hip. Too bad the contents are so insubstantial, he thought, ironically, and the amazingly lightweight nature of the alien technology undermined his use of the case as a weapon. Nevertheless, the off-balance scientist tottered backward, leaving an empty sneaker in Max's grasp. The flailing teenager tossed the shoe aside and scrambled to his feet. Concentrated mental energy flowed to his fingertips, turning them into instruments of death. If I have to, Max realized, I'd gladly burn my handprint into Morton's heart to stop him from hurting Liz again. The techie, too, maybe. Not so fast, Bruce Lee, Morton snarled before Max could put his lethal intentions into action. To his horror, he saw that Morton now had one arm around Liz's waist and the muzzle of a semi-automatic pistol pressed to her head. Her beautiful face was white as a cadaver's, while pure, unadulterated fright filled her glistening brown eyes. Stay right where I can see you, or your pretty little girlfriend is history. Max went still as a statue, left hand poised at his side as though reaching for his gun. Morton nodded at the briefcase clutched in Max's other hand and barked at his hapless cohort. Get the case. The techie approached Max hesitantly, glowering at the paralyzed youth through the thick lenses of his wire glasses. Don't give me any trouble, kid, he spat, although his threats were a lot less convincing than Morton's. Just hand over the bag. Max hated to surrender such valuable links to his native world to the likes of Morton and his geeky accomplice, but he wasn't about to sacrifice Liz for pieces of a broken flying saucer, no matter what planet it came from. Take it, he said coldly, his dark eyes fixed on Morton and his scared hostage. The lab guy snatched the briefcase from Max and scurried away. Now let her go. The gunman ignored Max's urgent plea. He glared at his partner instead. Make sure the merchandise is still inside, he ordered the scientist while keeping his gun pressed against Liz's temple. The techie placed the case atop the closest bed and rapidly inspected its contents. It's all here, he reported a moment later. He was sweating profusely and kept looking at the door as though he ardently wanted to be anywhere but here. Good, Morton grunted. Pack it up. We're getting out of here. But my equipment, the distressed lab worker objected, looking at the briefcase, locking the briefcase shut once more. Leave it, Morton snapped, still holding on to Liz. He backed towards the door. Let's go. Wait, Max shouted, afraid to move an inch for fear of inciting Morton's eager trigger finger. You don't need her. Take the briefcase, sure, but let her go. Morton sneered cruelly. Sorry, kid, she's coming with us. He waited until his nerdy partner had slipped out of the door behind him, carrying the crucial samples, then swung the muzzle of his handgun towards Max. Tough luck. The gun fired, its jarring report almost deafening the close quarters of the motel room. Acting on instinct, Max threw up his hand, and a shimmering emerald force field instantly formed between Max and Morton, shielding him from the oncoming bullet, which ricocheted off the protective energy bubble, slamming into the ceiling instead. Pulverized plaster rained down on Max, only to slide harmlessly off the verdant force field. What? Morton's jaw dropped and his bloodshot eyes bulged from their sockets. He fired again, this time out of panic, but the radiant green barrier once again shielded Max from the gunfire. Visibly freaked out, the blubbery jowls quivering, the berserk felon turned his gun back on Liz, shouting hoarsely at Max as he dragged Liz out of the dingy motel room. Keep away from me, you freak! Stay back! Trembling with fear and frustration, Max ground his teeth behind the translucent green energy, which added a bizarre emerald tint to the awful sight of a terrified Liz being carried off by the gun-wielding killer. His alien power had saved him from almost certain death, but what about Liz? Morton had her.
Oh, no.
Not Liz!
No, now Max has got to save her. Oh, jeez. All right. Let's take a sip.
Stressful.
We got in the nitty-gritty, the action.
The stuff, it's hitting the fan. It's going down. And I not once got to put on my glasses.
Oh, such a bummer. Should I do that? This is the
first chapter where nobody put on glasses. Yes.
No,
if somebody says glasses, it's...
Okay, I will have to have it on the ready.
But you know what I'm bummed I didn't do? Sorry, now my phone's going to fall. I really should have green force filled myself.
Oh,
when Max was, oh, yes.
There's a green force field?
Okay. Yeah. So when Max uses his force field, you see, this is what we do. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop distracting from the book. I mean, he's got Liz, people. We've got to do something.
Okay. All right. Chapter 20. Oh, my God, Alex, what are we going to do? Marie was beside herself, sniffing rosemary oil like it was the elixir of life, to absolutely no effect. Beside her in the front seat of the Jetta, parked outside the Motel 6, Alex looked just as horrified and helpless. The whole plan was falling apart right before their eyes. First Morton's blue Chevy had come squealing back into the parking lot, taking Maria and Alex by surprise. Then the two criminals had charged back into room number 19 before either of the teams in the Jetta could do anything to warn Max and Liz that they were about to be caught in the act. And what could we do anyhow? Murray realized, paralyzed with shock and uncertainty. Neither she nor Alex was armed with anything more potent than a half-dozen miniature vials of scented oils, all of which she would have gladly traded at this moment for a working Uzi and the skill to use it. How were a couple of ordinary teenagers like her and Alex supposed to rescue their friends from a trigger-happy felon like Joe Morton? As they watched impotently, the other man, the lab tech from the university, rushed out of the motel, clutching what had to be the legendary black attache case. Gunshots sounded from within number 19, causing Maria to almost jump out of her skin. 2 shots, she counted, going pale, 1 each for Max and Liz. She clasped her hands over her mouth, holding back a scream and looking hopelessly at Alex to make certain that she wasn't hearing things. But the anguished look on his face made it clear that he'd heard the shots, too. Tears welled in her eyes as she imagined Liz and Max lying bleeding and dying on the floor of room number 19. Where are Michael and Isabel? She wondered desperately, looking frantically for the Jeep, which she thought she spotted parked across the street, which was now filled with the noise and confusion of a multi-car pileup. It's not there. She and Alex were both 1% human. Neither of them had the power to heal Liz and Max if they'd really been shot. There's nothing I can do to save them. Hey, Jack. You just popped in, so say hi. We're on chapter 20. Okay. So convinced was Maria that her friends had been gunned down that it came as an actual relief when Joe Morton backed out of number 19, his meaty armor on Liz's squirming waist. She's alive, Maria rejoiced, then noticed the gun in Morton's free hand. But what about Max? The gunshots, along with tractors on the highway, attracted plenty of attention. Numbered wooden doors opened up all along the length of the motel as potential witnesses poked their heads out of their rooms to see what was happening, then ducked back inside at the sight of Morton and his smoking pistol. The imposing gunman fired a shot into the air to keep any onlookers at a distance as he tossed Liz into the backseat of the Chevy and, gun in hand, clambered in after her. With the cowardly-looking science guy at the wheel, the blue convertible burned rubber out of the parking lot, passing the Jeep as Michael and Isabel suddenly arrived on the scene. Morton fired repeatedly at the Jeep, clipping one corner of the windshield and forcing the army green vehicle to swerve across the parking lot, almost colliding with the parked Jetta. Sticking to the shoulder of the road to avoid the accident blocking the highway, the Chevy sped away in a cloud of dust and gravel, taking Liz Parker with it. Maria gripped the steering wheel in front of her, uncertain whether to take off in pursuit or check on Max first. Her dilemma was solved when Max himself came running out of Morton's motel room, seemingly unharmed. A desperate look upon his face, he dived into the backseat of the Jetta, breathing heavily. Max! Maria shouted, twisting around in her seat. Are you all right? I'm fine, he gasped, but you have to follow them. His voice was ablaze with urgency. They've got Liz. I know, Maria told him. Afraid of losing her best friend forever, she fired up the Jetta, even as Michael and Isabel, side by side in the Jeep, still wearing their Fox military uniforms, pulled up beside them. Maria shuddered at the sight of the bullet hole in the Jeep's windshield. That could have been Michael's head, she realized. In 10 words or less, Max updated his fellow hybrids on what had just happened. We can't lose that Chevy, he stressed passionately. We can't let Morton hurt Liz again. Sirens sounded nearby, growing louder by the second. The police, Maria realized, drawn by the gunshots, the auto accidents, or both. Hang on, she warned Max and Alex as she threw the Jetta into drive and peeled out of the parking lot, going from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds. With any luck, she hoped, the cops would be too tied up with the big highway pileup to chase after them right away. In the rearview mirror, she saw the Jeep zooming right behind her. Michael had already used his power, she saw, to repair the damage to their windshield. Hold on, Liz, she thought, following Morton's escape route along the shoulder of the highway. We're coming for you. Pouring on the speed, they came within sight of the blue Chevy before long. At first, Liz and her kidnappers were heading north on 180 towards Carlsbad proper, but they quickly veered off the main highway, turning left into a less populated side road that led west towards the mountains. Motels, souvenir shops, and fast food restaurants soon gave way to flat, barren desert scenery. Cacti and yucca provided sparse decoration to the arid landscape, whizzing past them on both sides of the road. Keeping one eye on the road and the other on the speedy convertible carrying away her friend, Maria tried to figure out where Morton and his accomplice were heading. Geography wasn't exactly her forte, but she didn't remember much in this direction except the mountains and maybe the northern tip of the park. Okay, she recalled, there was always Las Cruces, where the university was, but that was almost 150 miles away, on the other side of the Guadalupe Mountains. Surely the science guy wasn't planning to take a Shanghai teenage girl all the way back to his snazzy labs and academic colleagues. They must be planning to hide out in the mountains somewhere, she guessed. Pushing the speedometer needle up to 80 and beyond. Not if I have anything to say about it. Morton knew they were chasing him, of course, especially after they followed him off the highway into the desert, where pretty soon they were the only cars on the road. He glared back at them from the back of the convertible, holding onto his cap with one hand and his gun with the other. Maria glimpsed the back of Liz's head, bizarro red hair and all, but she was too to tell how Liz was holding up. First the shooting, now this, she agonized silently, trying to imagine what her friend was going through now. This must be like her worst nightmare come true. Can't you just blast them or something? She asked Max in desperation. She had the air conditioner turned all the way up and still felt covered in sweat. Some sort of Czechoslovakian tractor beam, maybe? Max shook his head. It's not that easy, he explained succinctly. Not at these speeds. Shutting seatbelts, he perched on the very edge of the back seat, leaning forward between Maria and Alex, his head and shoulders straining to bring them as close to the fleeing Chevy as possible. If that car crashes, Liz could be killed. So much for that brilliant idea, Maria thought. She desperately wanted to close the gap between them and the convertible, just so she could get a better look at Liz, but knew that she had to keep a safe distance between the Jetta and Morton's gun. He had already fired at them a couple of times, but without much success. The wild shots ricocheting off the axle of the head of the Jetta or whizzing by overhead. Don't take too many chances, she warned herself, knowing that Liz was depending on her. Morton had her be running out of gas and bullets eventually. If I have to, I'll chase him all the way to Tuscan. The wail of a solitary police siren coming from several miles behind them complicated her plans. She couldn't see any flashing lights in the mirror yet, but the siren definitely sounded like it was getting closer. Do you think they've got our description? She asked uneasily, sharing an anxious look with Alex. There was no way they could rescue Liz if they had to cope with the police, too. Too bad we're way out of Sheriff Valenti's jurisdiction, she thought. Don't worry about that, Max said grimly, dropping back into his own seat. He rolled down the window and shoved his arm outside, placing his palm against the outside of the door. Just keep driving, he said, his brow knitting in concentration. What in the world? She gulped, nearly losing control of the wheel as the Jetta's cherry red paint job changed before her eyes, a new metallic green color spreading out from the right side of the vehicle where Max's hand was, until the entire exterior of the car resembled some giant, glittering green bug. Hey, pretty cool, Alex enthused, impressed by the Jetta's instant makeover. You ever consider a career in Grand Theft Auto, Max? He joked in an obvious attempt to release some of the tension in the car. You'd be a natural. I changed the license plates, too, Max replied dryly. He sounded winded, as though the large-scale transformation had taken a lot out of him, just to be safe. Maria had mixed feelings about this whole thing. You can change it back, right? She glanced sheepishly back at Max. Otherwise, my mom is going to freak. Keep driving, Max repeated, unconcerned with anything except Liz's safe recovery. He sank back into his seat, exhausted. Peering in the mirror, she saw that Michael and Isabel had apparently been inspired by Max's ingenuity. Within seconds, the olive green Jeep had acquired a spanking new black paint job. Hold on, I lost my place. Okay. She wondered briefly whether Michael or Isabel had selected a color, then blinked her eyes as the numbers and letters on the Jeep's front license plate rearranged themselves. Wow, she thought, amazed at how adept her alien friends were getting with their powers. Instant automotive dyslexia. She had to wonder what Joe Morton thought of the pursuing car's uncanny metamorphosis. Turning her gaze away from the mirror, she looked ahead and saw the no-good gunman staring back at the Jetta with a totally flabbergasted expression on his ugly face. Ha! Maria gloated, enjoying his extreme confusion and discomfort. Maybe the Jeep and the Jetta's unnatural transformations would put the fear of God, or at the very least little green men, into the slime ball. A flashing blue light appeared in her mirror, ruining the moment. Looking back out her window, she saw a black and white state patrol car zooming up fast behind them. Instinctively, she put her foot on the brake, slowing down to something closer to the legal speed limit. A few car lengths back, behind the wheel of the Jeep, Isabel obviously did the same. Hey, what are you doing? Max shouted, watching in horror as Morton's blue Chevy pulled farther ahead of them, disappearing towards the not-so-distant mountains. They're getting away. You want those cops to pull us over? She snapped back at him, fully aware that Liz was speeding farther away from them with each passing second. You want to try explaining to the police what's going on? She knew there was no other choice but to slow down and hope the cop car passed them by. If you've got a better idea, Max, lay it on me. Despite his all-consuming desire to rescue Liz from Morton's clutches, Max couldn't argue with Maria's trenchant assessment of their current predicament. Hissing in frustration, he slammed his fist into his palm as his anguished eyes watched the Chevy shrink towards the horizon. Lights flashing, siren blaring, the state patrol car drew up behind the two slowing vehicles. Okay, everyone, put on their not guilty faces, Maria said, swallowing hard. A horrible thought occurred to her, and she suddenly prayed that Michael and Isabel had been shrewd enough to transmute their bogus Air Force uniforms into something less incriminating. That was all they needed now, for the pair of disguised aliens to get busted for impersonating an officer or two. The cop car cruised up alongside the Jetta, and a stone-faced state trooper, peering through the passenger side window, scanned the metallic green vehicle and its occupants. Maria slowed down cooperatively, letting the officer take a good long look. These aren't the droids you're looking for, she whispered under her breath, feeling a cold sweat glue the back of her shirt at her suddenly sticky skin. Here's where we find out, she thought, if Max's magic paint job did the trick. Paranoia made the next few seconds stretch out tortuously, but finally the wary trooper looked away from the Jetta, back towards the road ahead. Putting out a sudden burst of renewed speed, the flashing cop car accelerated away from them in pursuit, Maria assumed, of the fleeing blue Chevy. Letting her forehead droop onto the steering wheel, Maria let out a fervent sigh of relief, and wondered if she was ever going to get used to being on the run from the authorities. I'd better get used to it, she mused, if I'm going to keep hanging out with Michael and the rest of the pod squad. They had gotten away with it this time, but at an excruciating cost. Maria stared straight ahead at the disappearing lights of the patrol car. Morton and his convertible were nowhere to be seen, already long gone. She heard a broken-hearted groan from the back seat, but found herself afraid to turn around and look Max in the eyes. They had lost Liz.
All right, I'll go right into 21.
Yeah, I think we have enough time.
Okay. Shootouts, kidnapping, chases. This is more than I bargained for, the science guy shouted over the wind blowing in their faces. Behind the wheel of the blue convertible, he sounded positively hysterical. You just said that you needed a couple of tests done, that there was no danger, damn it. Now look at us, we're fugitives. Shut up and drive, Morton ordered from the back seat, where he kept guard over Liz while glaring back at the vehicles doggedly pursuing them. He fired again, bang, bang, then swore venomously as his shots missed their targets. Who the hell are these kids? Trapped in the back of the Chevy with the enraged gunman, Liz flinched every time the gun went off, throwing her hands over her ears. Morton's unhappy curses came as a relief to her, since they meant his bullets had not yet found her friends. Be careful, she silently urged Max and the others, deathly afraid that someone she cared for might be hurt or killed while trying to rescue her. She felt like she was caught in an endless, recurring nightmare, one that had started 2 years ago at the crashdown, when Max first risked everything to save her. How many times, she despaired, is Joe Morton going to make my friends place themselves in jeopardy for my sakes? A siren cried shrilly somewhere behind them, and Liz didn't know whether to welcome or dread the advent of the police. She was being kidnapped, true, but she also had way too many secrets of her own, secrets that, at all cost, needed to be hidden from any and all official attention. The driver's reaction to the distant siren was a good deal less ambiguous. Oh, God, he moaned, I'm going to jail. He peered ashen-faced into the rearview mirror, watching for the inevitable appearance of a police car in hot pursuit. This can't be happening. I'm a scientist, not an outlaw. Stop whining, Morton berated the terrified techie. Hit the gas, faster. He looked like he wanted to strangle the driver and take the wheel himself. No one's locking me up now, not this close to the big payoff. Liz knew he was talking about the briefcase full of alien hardware now resting on the passenger seat beside the self-proclaimed scientist. Hit the gas or I swear I'll blow your head off right here and now. The Chevy sped up dramatically, and sudden acceleration throwing Liz back against the padded seat cushions. That's better, Morton muttered, twisting around to check out the road behind him. What the? His florid, bloodthirsty features went pale and slack as he witnessed something that shocked him to the core. Okada, he called hoarsely to the science guy, whose name Liz finally learned. Look behind us. Am I going crazy, or are those cars changing colors? Liz risked a peek back over her shoulder. Sure enough, both the Jeep and the Jetta were acquiring new paint jobs right before their eyes. The surprising new hues flowing over the car's old colors like a high tide washing over the sandy shore. Liz felt a stab of guilt knowing that Max and the others must be frantic to rescue her if they were willing to use their powers so flagrantly in broad daylight. Holy cow, Okada exclaimed. For a moment, he sounded more intrigued than panicked, his scientific curiosity piqued by the two automobiles' inexplicable transformations. How is that possible? The switch occurred in seconds. Only moments later, the red Jetta and olive Jeep had become completely replaced by their green and black counterparts. Infuriated by his inability to comprehend what he had just witnessed, Morton turned on Liz, jabbing his semi-automatic pistol under her chin. The steel muzzle felt hot against her tender skin. "Who are you kids?" Morton demanded, spittle flying from his blubbery lips. His face was so close to hers that she could taste his sour breath, see his yellow tobacco-stained teeth. "What are you?" The blaring police siren growing louder by the minute spared Liz any need to reply immediately. "Oh, crap!" Okada screeched, his voice cracking. Flashing blue lights were now visible behind them, passing the transformed Jeep and Jetta to chase after the speeding convertible and its passengers. "It's the state patrol." "Later," Morton promised Liz ominously before giving the cop car his full attention. "Faster," he ordered Okada, yanking his face and gun away from his frightened hostage. "Give it everything you've got." The Chevy shot like a rocket down the lonely desert road, leaving the Jeep and Jetta far behind, but the black and white police car continued to gain on them. "Attention, you in the blue Chevrolet," an amplified voice addressed them sternly. "This is the state patrol." Liz heard Okada whimper pathetically, as the distraught scientist was definitely not cut out for a life of crime. "Slow down and pull over at once. I repeat, slow down and pull over." "The hell I will," Morton snarled, aiming his pistol at the oncoming vehicle. "Nobody's taking my merchandise away from me now." He opened fire, unleashing an ear-spitting salvo of gunshots against the cops, who must have gotten nearer to the Chevy than the Jeep or Jetta ever did, because Morton's bullets inflicted a lot more damage this time around. One shot perforated the hood of the police car, causing an eruption of steam and smoke from the engine below, while another shot tore through the besieged car's right front tire. Morton chuckled with a vicious glee as the injured vehicle lost control and swerved off the road into the desert, bulldozing through a stand of thorny mesquite before coming to rest amid a miniature sandstorm created by the car's own bumpy landing. "Ha!" Morton gloated. "Serves him right." Liz crossed her fingers, praying that the officers were okay. She stared intently, hoping to see the troopers emerge unscathed from the wrecked vehicle, but the gritty cloud obscured her view, and the Chevy literally left the crash scene in the dust as they made their getaway, Okada still whimpering quietly to himself. Liz searched the empty roadway stretching out behind them. She spotted no sign of either the Jeep or Maria's Jetta. Had the police car chased them off? She didn't need extrasensory perception to appreciate the dilemma that her friends must have been in. "I'm on my own," she realized, numb with horror. No cavalry was coming, not right away, leaving her alone and helpless with a man who had already come close to killing her once before. Maybe this time, she thought, my luck has run out. Consumed by a crazed desire to get far away from the stranded state patrol vehicle as possible, Okada kept his foot to the gas pedal, not slowing until they were well into the foothills of the looming Guadalupe Mountains. "I don't believe this. This can't be happening," Okada kept repeating over and over, apparently unable to believe that his career as a legitimate scientist had led him to this bullet-strewn flight from justice. Liz would have felt sorry for him if her own future career prospects, along with her life, weren't also hanging by a thread. "I've been thinking," Okada said, glancing nervously back at Morton. "Maybe we should just turn ourselves in before anybody gets hurt." The Chevy slowed to under 50 miles per hour so that the reluctant fugitive could concentrate on persuading his volatile partner. "I mean, the whole thing is getting way out of control. Testing some spacey metal you liberated from the feds is one thing, but taking hostages, shooting at police cars, this wasn't part of the deal." "Forget it," Morton said forcefully. "Nobody's talking to the police about anything." He gave Liz a murderous look. "Let me worry about the girl." But Okada wasn't taking no for an answer. "I'm serious, Morton. You're going to get us both killed in a police shootout probably." Mustering all his courage, the rebellious scientist tried to lay down the law. "Well, no way. I'm a PhD, not a desperado. My life is worth more than that." "Why, you—" Morton lunged from the back seat, losing his temper, but stopped himself before actually attacking the man driving the car. He took a deep breath, regaining control, then contemplated his mutinous accomplice with a calculating look upon his ruddy face. "Okay," he said eventually. "Pull over to the side so we can talk this over." Liz didn't like the sound of this, but she kept her mouth shut. If there was any chance that Okada could talk Morton to letting her go, she was all for it, even though that prospect struck her as extremely unlikely. "Stay out of this," she told herself prudently. "You don't want to get between two desperate men, especially when one of them are armed." Coming to a halt next to some desert shrubs, Okada parked the Chevy, then turned to confront Morton. "About time you started seeing sense," he said, wiping perspiration from his forehead. "Things are bad enough already. We don't want to let this disaster escalate into a full-fledged bloodbath." "Whatever you say," Morton grunted. He shoved Liz down into her seat. "Don't move a muscle," he threatened her before swinging open the back door and stepping out of the convertible, where he then yanked open Okada's door as well. Get out, he ordered the scientist. What? I don't understand. Okada peered up fearfully at Morton, suddenly very reluctant to surrender the will. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down like a sine wave as he made another stab at reasoning with the stocky gunman. I thought we were going to talk about this. Get out, I said, Morton bellowed. He plucked Okada's glasses off the scientist's nose and hurled them into the gravel at his feet. Liz heard glass and plastic shatter beneath the gunman's cowboy boots. Talk time's over, Morton snarled, grabbing a hold of Okada's collar and dragging him out of the parked convertible. He spun the smaller man around so Okada's back faced the desert, scrubbed, and pushed him away. Sneering coldly, Morton raised his gun. Guess I don't need you anymore, Professor. No, wait, Okada cried, trying to ward off death by throwing up his hand, almost tripping over a plump cacti. Liz knew she should look away, but all she could do was cover her ears as a single gunshot permanently ended Okada's scientific career. His crumpled body lay amid the cacti, a crimson stream baked soil. Morton gave the body a savage kick into a deep ditch beside the road. How much is worth now, Mitch? Remarked snidely. Him, Liz stammered. The cowl nearly triggering another post-traumatic flashback of her own shooting. She clutched her stomach protectively, but with considerable effort, forcing her tumultuous thoughts to stay firmly rooted in the present. I have to keep my wits about me, she realized, if I want to get out of this alive. The odds of that were looking slimmer and slimmer, though. Liz knew Morton would not have shot Okada in front of her if he had any intention of letting her go. The only reason she wasn't dead yet, she figured, was that Morton still wanted to know how she and her friends were connected to all this. Not to mention how they managed to generate force fields, change the color of moving cars, etc. Couldn't hurt to remind him of all those unanswered questions, she judged, just in case he was thinking of disposing of her at the same time as Okada. You knew my friends were going to keep looking for me, she warned, crouching in the backseat of the Chevy. They're very talented. They can do all sorts of things. It felt weird to hint at, even obliquely at the hybrid special abilities to such an untrustworthy character, but at this point, Liz reasoned, the paranormal cat was pretty thoroughly out of the bag. You don't want to make them too angry. Well, was that a flicker of fear in Morton's bloodshot eyes? Yeah, well, you don't want to get me mad, little lady. He placed a fresh clip into his handgun and lumbered towards the front seat of the convertible. Before he could sit down, however, another siren wailed nearby. The same patrol car, Liz wondered, or reinforcements. For her friend's sake, she hoped Max and the others were keeping a low profile. Damn, Morton cursed. He eyed the Chevy dubiously, suddenly seeing it as a liability. He checked the dashboard and grunted, almost out of gas anyway. She heard him mutter moments before he grabbed the attaché case from the passenger seat and picked up the canvas backpack from beneath the glove compartment. He tossed the backpack, which she recognized as one that Alex had donated to Michael and Isabel's con routine, as Liz, hitting her in the chest. Take that, he ordered brusquely, taking a long, hard look at the arid wasteland at the Ocher foothills beyond. We're going for a hike.
It paused a couple times while you were finishing reading, so I think it's a good idea to save it right now, just in case. So we'll come back for...
And stand by. Recap with Jess, and next week we should be finished. There's only 6 or 7 chapters left. So make sure you join us next week. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we'll be back on in a couple minutes.